Welcome to Difficult Bible Verses Made Clear. I'm Reverend Elation, not a real reverend, and I want to talk about this verse here that a lot of people have problems with. Jesus said, "Do not think that I've come to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law until all is fulfilled." People usually bring up this Bible verse in defense of keeping the Moses covenant, of bringing those rules in and saying that Jesus didn't come to abolish it. But the very wording Jesus is using, if you actually hear what he's saying, makes total sense with what he actually came to do. The law and the prophets, or the Old Testament, is different than this old covenant. When he's talking about the law and the prophets, that's from the Mosaic covenant on, and all the prophets prophesied during that covenant time. So don't just think Old Testament and don't think you're throwing away some of the Bible if something is fulfilled. Because what it means is in that covenant, there were stipulations that needed to be fulfilled. Deuteronomy 28:1 says it specifically. For that covenant to fulfill it, one would have to obey the voice of God perfectly, and one would have to obey all of those commands perfectly. Nobody did. That's why Jesus came, and why he came as a man from Israel in that covenant. That's why he lived perfect. That's why he was sinless. That's the whole reason he was sinless and lived and died a perfect life to satisfy the terms of that covenant. So in Matthew 5, when he's doing the Beatitudes, he's saying, "You've heard it said this, but I say this. You've heard this, but here's something else." His response was this after that. Look it, I'm not here to destroy or rip up this old thing, but you're in this covenant now. But when I get done with what I'm doing, when all is fulfilled, what, all like in the book of Revelation, the end times, when everything is rolled up like a scroll or any of that, when every possible thing could happen, all? No, when all he needed to do was fulfilled, when all that the contract required, when everything he came to do as the Son of Man, as the Messiah, as the Anointed One, everything he needed to do up until he said, "It is finished." That is the time period he's talking about. Until all that he done is fulfilled, that entire covenant is in place. That's why he said, "Still stay and listen to Moses and listen to the Pharisees. But follow me, abide in me." Because in a couple years, they're going to be walking in this new covenant life when all is fulfilled. A lot of people will see this verse and they'll think it means that the new covenant and old are a mixture, or all the stuff in the Mosaic covenant is applicable to today. But do they go to church on Saturday, right? Does their shirt have two kinds of fabric on it? No, they're not following every little thing, and they'll have a reason for it. Or they'll say, "Well, we have the moral laws, or we don't do the ritual laws." And they have no logical reason to make that distinction. But when you understand the new covenant and the old, and that the old had to be fulfilled, and when God promised that he wouldn't make a covenant that was like the one on Mount Sinai with the fathers, Jeremiah 31, and that this new one will have different qualities and even the Spirit could live inside in this new covenant, Ezekiel 36, then you'll see the difference. And you'll know that you can't have the old covenant and new at the same time. That's why one had to end for the other to begin. And that's why in Jesus' life, to the people he was talking to, he told them, "Don't think I'm here to destroy or rip apart or dismiss Moses' covenant." He says, "I've come to fulfill it. And when I fulfill it, then the jot, then the tittle of those laws will not apply to you anymore, because in this new covenant, you get in by faith. It doesn't matter what country you're from, doesn't matter your nationality. And then you get the righteousness Jesus provided, not based on what you did or trying to follow the rules, but it's the righteousness and the right access, which is also your part in this new covenant. You believe, that's how you get in. Righteousness is what you get, and then you can even get the Holy Spirit. So he's permanently with you inside you from then on. Without understanding this new covenant and old covenant deal, this verse and so many others will be confusing, and they start different denominations. They're getting all these weird ideas about the future and the past and the Bible. It's so clear when you understand this. Then when you read Romans, when you read Hebrews, when you read Galatians and Ephesians, and you know that Paul is coming from this place where he's trying to tell them, all that lost stuff I spent my entire life learning, it's worth nothing now. Why? Because of Jesus Christ and what he did. And yeah, all the bad stuff the old says not to do, that's also something that Christians don't do. The reason God made this new covenant was because we couldn't fix it ourselves. So he's like, all right, I'm going to take it out. I'm going to put my spirit inside you. Then my spirit inside of you. Now we're going to start tackling this sin thing. Now we're going to not just avoid bad things, but we're going to start doing good things. And we're going to continue on the ministry of Christ, bringing freedom to the captives, helping people out, hooking them up. Why? Because God wanted it the whole time. That's the other thing you got to remember, right? God wanted this. Jesus wanted this. This is why he came. You don't have to say, I'm scared if I take away some Old Testament thing and I don't think Moses applies to me, then maybe God won't love me or he'll be mad. No, he'll be so glad that you decided to read what Jesus actually came to do and that you said, you know what? It's not by any of these works, but by faith alone. Boom. So don't make the mistake that people still make today, that they blame them in the first century for doing, saying, oh, the Jews were expecting this to be literal, when it's actually a spiritual application. People do that today, saying this kingdom and all is fulfilled is some future literal thing, but it's a spiritual application. It's something that you wouldn't see, but you would see the effects of, because Jesus not sinning and Jesus obeying the voice of the Lord perfectly is exactly what Deuteronomy 28:1 said one needed to do to fulfill the stipulations of the covenant for Israel. So then God could do his side of blessings, of opening up the whole thing to the whole world. So don't let this passage make you think that the new covenant isn't what it is or the old covenant is still around. There's a reason they're called that. There's a reason Jesus talks about the new covenant of his blood. And there's a reason why. Jesus said, wait in Jerusalem for the promise of the Father. You never hear anybody talking about, well, when did God promise that? When did he promise this Holy Spirit, tongues, power thing? When he promised the new covenant. Jeremiah 31, Ezekiel 36. He takes the sin away. He takes the law away. He puts a spirit inside of you, and then you know what he wants to do, and you know how to do it. Then you know his judgments, and you do them. That's what God wanted the whole time. The whole reason Jesus came was to get this spirit in you, and God told you about it hundreds of years before, and they knew it. Why don't we? Well, we've had a lot of teachers who aren't from churches that really actively know what the Holy Spirit does. They don't really list specifically a way that you could see the Holy Spirit other than somebody being nice or something or feeling bad because you sinned. But remember what the Holy Spirit was in the old and the new. The active power of God on the earth. Power for us within and power for God without, into the world, outside of us, getting what he wants done. And you don't get that in the old covenant, only in the new. If you put these things together, you can differentiate this old and new covenant. So many of these verses will just fall into place. And then, like with this one, a lot of these difficult verses will be made clear. Thanks so much.